Washington's Kalen DeBoer is negotiating a deal with Alabama to replace Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa. That has been confirmed by our Matt Zenitz over at 24/7 Sports. DeBoer spent just one season in Seattle, but did lead the Huskies to their first playoff appearance since 2016 with a 14-1 record. Of course, went to the national championship where they lost to Michigan. The Tide had reportedly targeted Florida State's Mike Norvell and Oregon's Dan Lanning, both of whom decided to stay at their respective schools. DeBoer's buyout is about $12 million after signing a contract extension with Washington in November. Let's welcome in college football expert Barrett Sallee. Barrett, as mentioned in this, look, when Nick Saban said he was retiring, we had this list of everybody that they were looking at, including Dan Lanning. Mike Norvell was the latest one yesterday everybody was talking about. Now we're down to Kalen DeBoer apparently negotiating a contract with Alabama. What would you think about that matchup? What do you think about this news?
Yeah, I like it for Alabama. Look, a lot of coaches can be successful there. And was Kalen DeBoer the first choice? Probably not. However, he might just be the right choice. I think there's one thing that should be said about Kalen DeBoer is he's a winner. Winners win. And he's done it at Sioux Falls in the NAIA. He's done it at Fresno State in the Mountain West, and obviously at Washington in the Pac-12. And look, I think there's this idea around my part of the country, in SEC country, that you have to have SEC ties. That's not necessarily true if you're a winner. You can get guys to help recruit. You can get stars based on the success. And Kalen DeBoer has checked basically every single box. So I love this hire for Alabama. It's a home run hire. And look, is it going to be perfect? No. You're replacing Nick Saban, right? Nothing's going to be easy when it comes to Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. But I'm not necessarily surprised. You know, he was a little further down on the list than Norvell and Lanning and Steve Sarkisian and these guys. But he's probably the right fit when all is said and done.
And Sark, another one of those coaches putting out something, not saying necessarily I'm staying with Texas, but that this is home. I love being here. These coaches putting out these things on social media. Those other coaches like a Dan Lanning and a Mike Norvell, I mean, you look at Alabama, you think this is the pinnacle. But we've had some people say, look, you don't want to be the guy to follow the guy. Why do you think those guys decided to stay with their respective schools instead of potentially looking into Alabama?
Well, I think what's interesting now is the difference between a top 5 and a top 20 job is minute right now, because you're still going to get paid the exact same. So it all depends on what your taste is, right? And for Dan Lanning, being a Big Ten coach on the West Coast and basically getting the chance to say, hey, that Alabama job, I turned it down. Even if that's true or not, you still can say it. So getting to basically run the entire Pacific Coast as the power while also playing in the Big Ten is very attractive for Dan Lanning. So I think for Steve Sarkisian, sort of the same thing. Moving into the SEC, you're a little bit more stable. In Steve Sarkisian's case, you might be even more stable than Alabama right now. So there are, you know, it's just all about taste right now in college football. So, you know, Bobby Bowden said it best back in the day. You never want to be the guy who follows a legend. You want to be the guy who follows the guy who followed the legend. And so Kalen DeBoer has his work cut out for him. But I think that mindset, along with the fact that you can win pretty much anywhere these days as long as you're in one of the Power 2 conferences, led to Dan Lanning saying no, led to even Mike Norvell at FSU not being a Power 2 conference, but still being in that national championship discussion too. You got to include him in there. So it's, you know, it's a tough job at Alabama right now.
It's absolutely a very tough job at Alabama, and I'm curious, look, you said this is a very good fit for Alabama. Looking at Kalen DeBoer, we saw what he did in Washington this past season. He was a head coach at Sioux Falls from 2005 to 2009. Other than that, he's only been a head coach since 2000. He was at Fresno State before going to Washington, and not taking away anything he did at Washington, because that is absolutely spectacular. Is it kind of a short range of success to look at for Kalen DeBoer stepping into somewhere like Alabama?
Well, yeah, at the elite level, at the top level, yeah, because, you know, he's what, 4 years removed from not even being at Fresno State and being an assistant. So, yeah, I mean, it's the sample size is small, but it's also really, really good, right? I mean, he played for the national championship and really went into the fourth quarter against Michigan with a relatively legitimate shot at springing that upset too. So yeah, you know, it's a small sample size, and Alabama fans might have to go through some speed bumps with him because there might be a little bit of a learning curve in a variety of different ways. And I think that should be okay. I don't think anybody expected. I don't think anybody should expect, I say, for anybody to come in and just be Nick Saban, right? That's not realistic. And think about this. The last time Alabama went through a coaching search, they had Rich Rodriguez for like a half second, and they settled for Nick Saban. He was down on that list. That worked out pretty well.
What does Kalen DeBoer bring to Alabama if this deal does go through? We know he's an offensive-minded coach, spent a lot of years as a coordinator, whether it was with the quarterbacks or just teaching an offense in general there. We saw what he did with his Washington offense, Michael Penix Jr. You have Jalen Milroe, who's hinted at returning to Alabama. What does Kalen DeBoer bring to this Alabama team?
Yeah, offensive innovation, right? And I think the pedigree of success in sending players to the pros. Look at the wide receiving core that he had last year. That's comparable to the one you had at Alabama with Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs and those guys. And so obviously we saw with Michael Penix and what he was able to do, developing him into a star. Look, we all watched Michael Penix at Indiana. I don't think anybody thought that he would be an NFL caliber quarterback. And now he's going to be probably a first-round draft pick. So from a new age of football, Kalen DeBoer fits and checks every box in what you want from a head coach because he understands the transfer portal. He understands that offense wins championships now, not defense. And he's got a great talent pool to choose from at Alabama. So, it's going to be weird not having a defensive guy at Alabama. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be very, very strange. But it's the right offensive guy, a guy who's won at an elite level. And, yeah, sample size small. He went to the national championship with Washington. That's not easy to do.
Speaking of Washington, and look, this is heartbreaking for them if it does go through because you're like, we got this coach. Look at what we did. We're excited about next season. And now he could potentially be out the door. What is next for Washington?
Oh, it's easy. You just go down one office and knock on Ryan Grubb's door, their offensive coordinator, and say, hey, dude, I got some boxes. You want to move next door to the head coach's office? Cool, let's go do that. Look, it's really funny because Ryan Grubb actually turned down the Alabama offensive coordinator job last year, and Alabama settled for Tommy Rees. And now DeBoer's coming to Tuscaloosa, and if you're Ryan Grubb, I mean, it's a no doubter. Washington with him at the helm will be totally fine. And think about this. They sort of went off the radar with Jimmy Lake, and then obviously with Kalen DeBoer. It's not like Ryan Grubb's a household name. But that's kind of how Washington operates now.
Barrett, I'm curious. Coaches don't have a long leash when it comes to the NFL or college for that matter. At an institution like Alabama, how quickly are they going to want to see success from him? What is success for him in his first season there if this deal does go through? How long is his leash?
It's Alabama, Amanda, national championship or bust every single year, right? No, it's not. That's unrealistic. If Alabama fans want to win a national championship in year one and expect a national championship in year one, let's not go that far. I think for Alabama, being in the mix for a college football playoff berth in the 12-team playoff should be the goal every single year. Does DeBoer have to make it this season? I think that would not making it would be disappointing. But it wouldn't necessarily tell the whole tale or be enough to have a judgment on what he is long term. So for Alabama, for this year, with Kalen DeBoer at the helm in year one, there should be a little bit of a grace period, but he should still be in that 12-team discussion. He doesn't necessarily have to make that field, though.
Final question for you, Barrett, here. Will Rogers just transferred to Washington. You're seeing on social media he's got to be sick if, in fact, this does go through. Any potential we could see him follow his head coach if this does happen?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, look, this is just my opinion of Will Rogers. I don't think he's an NFL caliber quarterback, and I don't think he'd be able to succeed at Alabama. And I don't think he's going to be able to succeed at Washington either. So, yeah, it's disappointing for sure. But I would imagine that there will be a lot of players excited to go play for Ryan Grubb if he is hired as the head coach at Washington. But Will Rogers following his head coach to Alabama? No, I don't see that happening. Alabama's got better quarterbacks.
I lied because I said that was my final question. I do have one more. We knew when Nick Saban decided to retire, that portal window opened for the players at Alabama, 30 days to decide what they're going to do. Some people said we could potentially see an exodus of those guys that have signed on, that are coming in, or potentially maybe want to leave with Nick Saban out of there. How important is it for Alabama to move fast in this situation to try to keep continuity there?
Well, it's the most important thing they have to do. And it's funny because the 72-hour story that broke a couple days ago, I think it got misconstrued. Because what the athletic director, Greg Byrne, actually said is to the players to hold on for 72 hours before making any decisions. He didn't necessarily want to hire somebody. He just told the players to hold on. So now if you're Kalen DeBoer, you're coming in and you're calling, you're DMing, you're texting every single person on that roster and sell them on the future of the program. Players are going to leave. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's just what day and age we're in right now. Players are going to bail for better situations, or what they perceive to be better situations. We saw that with Isaiah Bond earlier today. But, you know, Kalen DeBoer is going to keep a lot of them around. But I would still expect some names, some pretty significant names to head to the portal, because let's be honest, there have been phone calls already made because tampering is a thing. Even though it's not legal, we're not justifying illegal activity from head coaches, but we know that happens.
Oh, I'm sure that's never happened. Barrett, hey, if you want to make a player stay, I got my team to the national championship is a pretty good selling point. Yes. Barrett Sallee, we appreciate it. We're going to keep tabs on this to see what does go down out of Tuscaloosa. We appreciate your time. Barrett, part of the Cover 3 podcast. Watch for an emergency pod when and if this does happen again. Kalen DeBoer negotiating a contract with Alabama, according to reports. Everything you need to know about the world of college football, it belongs to the Cover 3 podcast. Make sure to download and follow.